Helbrecht is the current High Marshal of the Black Templars Space Marine chapter. In addition to being High Marshal of the Black Templars, Helbrecht is the greatest naval commander in the Adeptus Astartes and assumed overall command of all Space Marine warships during the Third War for Armageddon in 998 M41. But first, let's start from the beginning. High Marshal Helbrecht embodies the qualities of stubbornness, personal honor, and unswerving loyalty to the Emperor of Mankind inherent in the Black Templars chapter. Early in Helbrecht's career, it was clear he was destined for greatness. It was his qualities of bloody-mindedness and stubborn determination that elevated him above the rest of the Astartes of his chapter. Following the final subjugation of the Xenarchs of the Sigillar Nebula, Helbrecht was elected High Marshal in 989 M41. His ride through the Black Templars was swift, as his desire to slay the enemies of the Emperor impressed his peers with its sheer ferocity. Even as an initiate, Helbrecht fought with zeal and courage beyond expectations, holding the line against a vast swarm of Tyranids at Deathcore Ridge, refusing to yield whilst there yet remained a foe to fight. Helbrecht served in the Vinkless Crusade that took place in 833 M41, still a lowly neophyte at the time. Helbrecht was merely a witness to the dramatic events of the campaign, under the command of the legendary High Marshal Ladulus. The Black Templars fought alongside Inquisitor Vinculus and the Sisters of Battle of the Order of the Bloody Rose against Chaos Death Cult warriors upon the blighted world of Beleriand IV. Helbrecht was inducted into the Sword Brethren just a few short solar decades later for the legendary feat of besting a demon prince with only his combat blade. As part of Marshal Dayden's crusade, Helbrecht fought with courage and furious zeal for many solar decades, eventually rising to the rank of Marshal and command of the crusade upon Dayden's death. Many solar decades later, in 990 M41, when High Marshal Cordhel was slain by a frenzied Cornet Berserker, the Marshals of the Black Templars gathered to select a new leader. Helbrecht was unanimously elected as the new High Marshal and was ritually presented with the Sword of the High Marshals, the most sacred relic of the Black Templars. This mighty power sword is said to contain fragments of the weapon wielded by Rogal Dorn when he accompanied the Emperor onto Horus's flagship, the Vengeful Spirit, in the final hours of the Siege of Terra. It was the decree of the Black Templars' founding High Marshal, Sigismund, that the weapon be carried by all subsequent High Marshals, so that they would forever be reminded of their duty to atone for the Emperor's mortal wounding by incorporating pieces of Dorn's original sword in its forging. Following his ascension, Helbrecht immediately declared a crusade against the Scytho fiends of the Ghoul Stars that became known as the Ghoul Stars Crusade. Taking the fight into the desolate region of space, no previous Imperial expedition had ever returned from that area of the galaxy. Within 8 standard years, the Xenos population of the outlying Ghoul Stars systems had been exterminated, and the crusade pushed onwards to the aliens' homeworld. But upon reaching the core systems, they were found to be eerily empty. No trace of the aliens could be found, but before a proper investigation could be launched, a desperate call for help came from the besieged hive world of Armageddon. The dreaded Orc warlord Ghazghkull Mag Uruk Thraka had returned at the head of a massive Orc war, the likes which had not been seen in the Imperial history since the Olanor Crusade. The Third War for Armageddon had begun. 3 crusades of the Black Templars mustered at the chapter keep in Fergax and departed for the Segmentum Solar after observing the correct prayers and devotions to the Emperor. Upon arrival in the Armageddon system, Helbrecht was put in overall command of the assembled Adeptus Astartes fleet drawn from several different chapters, as the High Marshal possessed the most naval experience of any of the Astartes officers present. Meanwhile, Marshal Rickard and Amalric took their crusades to the service of Armageddon. The war in orbit was bitterly fought, with Helbrecht leading many boarding actions against Orc space hulks, and together with the Imperial Navy Admiral Barol's battle fleet, these actions effectively crippled the Orc invasion. As the space hulk believed to be Ghazghkull's flagship retreated from Armageddon, Helbrecht swore a great oath to pursue the Orc warlord. Commissar Yarek, the hero of Armageddon, petitioned Helbrecht for the honor of accompanying the Black Templars in their quest. It is a measure of the respect in which the High Marshal held the venerable Commissar that his request was granted. Helbrecht and Yarrick pursued Ghazghkull across the galaxy. However, while they were able to corner his flagship, Kel Reka, Ghazghkull was able to escape into the warp and ultimately begin his Great War. In 930 M41, the forces of the infamous Necron Overlord, Imotekh the Stormlord, Pharaoh of the powerful Imotekh dynasty, descended upon the frozen plains of the Imperial Ice World of Schrödinger 7. The Necrons drove the local defenders to the shelter of the cryonite mines, but were unable to prevent the planet's astropathic choir from dispatching a distress hymnal. A counterattack swiftly arrived in the form of a Black Templar strike force under the command of Marshal Helbrecht. Imotekh was not caught by surprise so easily and had already shifted his undying Necron armies into a formidable defensive configuration. Helbrecht led the assault, intended as a crippling alpha strike, but was instead blunted by a series of impeccably planned Necron ambushes on the drop pod and Thunderhawk drop zones. As the frozen caverns echoed to the roar of explosions, scores of Black Templars and Necrons alike were hurled into the rivers of molten cryonite. Eventually, Imotekh and Helbrecht met in single combat atop the stalactite heavy span of an ice bridge. In the battle that followed, Helbrecht, driven by zeal and hatred of the Xenos, dealt Imotekh a dozen ruinous blows, but each time the Pharaoh's living necrodermis was able to quickly repair in a matter of seconds. Despite being the better swordman, Helbrecht failed to land a truly crippling blow on his opponent, and as the duel drew on, the Marshal finally collapsed under the assault of the Necron Lord, blood flowing from a score of serious wounds. However, instead of finishing off his opponent, Imotekh brought his scythe down and merely severed Helbrecht's right hand to remind the Marshal of his much-deserved defeat. Helbrecht roared in fury and pain as Imotekh bitched him off the ice bridge to the frigid cavern floor far below. The surviving Black Templars quickly rallied to their fallen Marshal's side and made a fighting retreat, leaving Schrödinger 7 in the Stormlord's hands. Following this humiliating defeat, Helbrecht swore an oath of vengeance against the Necrons in general and Imotekh in particular, vowing that the next time they met, only one would leave the battlefield alive. Helbrecht would get his chance at fulfilling his oath of vengeance when his crusade fleet detected Necron activity around the world of the Vatis. Moving swiftly to intercept, Helbrecht rejoiced when their quarry was identified as the inevitable Conqueror, Imotech's personal Cairn-class tomb ship and flagship. Moving in with all haste, the Black Templar battle barge Sigismund managed to land crippling blows on the inevitable Conqueror's propulsive array, stranding it in place. Intending to get his revenge on his opponent personally, Helbrecht ordered an immediate teleport and boarding torpedo assault upon the Necron tomb ship, and within solar minutes, the decks of the inevitable Conqueror were swarming with vengeful Black Templars Astartes. Helbrecht would not even get the satisfaction of seeing his opponent. While Imotech's pride urged him to fight, logic won out, and the Stormlord teleported himself and many of his most valuable assets away from his flagship to his unengaged escort ships. The Necrons immediately accelerated away from the fighting and made good their escape. Fuming with impotent rage, Helbrecht could only gain a meager measure of satisfaction from ensuring the total destruction of the inevitable Conqueror by setting it on a collision course with the closest star. The frustrated Helbrecht reaffirmed his oath of vengeance, swearing once again that he would see Imotekh dead. Those Black Templars, with some familiarity with the undying Necrons, fear that their Marshal has bitten off more than he can chew. While Helbrecht is certainly capable of besting the Necron Pharaoh in single combat, preventing the undying mechanical fiend from teleporting to safety and destroying Imotekh outright may prove to be an impossible feat for a single chapter of Space Marines, no matter their zeal. When the Great Rift swept across the galaxy, the Black Templars' fleet was badly scattered. It was as they mustered to continue Helbrecht's single-minded pursuit of the Orc warlord Ghazghkull that Primarch Roboute Guilliman arrived. Although High Marshal Helbrecht welcomed both the Primarch and the new Primaris Marine that joined his chapter, there was little time for war council and little need, in truth, for High Marshal Helbrecht knew his mind. With Chaos forces rampant and much of the Imperium isolated, Guilliman grew frustrated, but before departing, he reminded Helbrecht of the blade he carried, the sword borne by High Marshal Helbrecht is a sign of office, a weapon wielded in turn by every High Marshal since Sigismund. As the tale goes, the sword of the High Marshals was forged from the remnants of the blade of Rogal, Primarch of the Imperial Fists Legion, from whom the Black Templars were created. According to the legend, it was Rogal who discovered the beaten body of the Emperor aboard Horus's flagship, and fulfilling his father's last request, returned him to the Imperial Palace to be interred upon his golden throne. It was at that moment Dawn shattered his sword in rage at his failure to defend the Emperor of mankind. It was Sigismund, then the first captain of the Imperial Fists Legion, that gathered the shards, although at the time he knew not what would become of them. With the splitting of the legions during the implementation of the Codex Astartes, Sigismund would become the Black Templars' first High Marshal. It was then that he decreed that the sword of the High Marshals should incorporate shards of Dawn's weapon, forever reminding his sons of their duty. Chastised by Guilliman's greater perspective, High Marshal Helbrecht immediately sent forth Black Templars' crusade to aid every ecclesiarchal world within reach. Alright guys, thanks a lot for watching, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell to stay tuned for more.